I have myopic macular degeneration, which in terms of symptoms is pretty similar to wet age-related macular degeneration. So I have abnormal blood vessels that leak fluid into my eyes. It's just for me, the cause is severe myopia and the strain on my retina from it being stretched so thin. I guess there's what we call benign bleeds versus regular bleeds. And so I tend to get more of the benign bleeds, which are it's actual blood that gets into my eye through cracks in my retina from it being stretched so thin. So a lot of the times I'll go through the day, I'll get these spots in my eyes that until I go to the doctor, I don't always know what type of bleed it is, if it's the fluid from a blood vessel or if it's just actual blood. But every now and then I'll be surprised. So I'll go through my day. I get these at least once a month. I'll get one of these blood spots in my eyes. So that's part of the reason I have to go every 4 weeks to my eye doctor. It makes it a little bit stressful. I'll have my appointments every 4 weeks just so we can always check to see what's happening, what if I need an injection or if it's something that will resolve itself on its own. But I'd say that because my eyes just constantly have spots, fluid, blood in them, that's probably my biggest frustration or the biggest hurdle that I have dealing with macular degeneration. It's not just the long-term impacts from the scarring when I get these the fluid in my eyes, but it's every day I'll have just some kind of shadowy area in my vision that impacts what I'm able to do day to day. If my eyes are fluid free, I can drive during the day in clear weather. I stopped driving at night a few years ago, not even just because of the fluid or the scarring, but one of the symptoms that I've gotten as a result of this is photophobia, which is an extreme sensitivity to light. So for me, it would be the headlights from other cars would just kind of wash out my vision entirely. So I couldn't see anything else. All I could see were the headlights from the cars. And same kind of thing with driving like during snow or rain. So I basically drive if I know where I'm going, or if it's clear, if it's fine conditions outside, I can operate a car. But every appointment I go to now, my doctor's like, you're borderline for me to drive with your regular license. I know there's options in terms of like low vision training that you can have. So people, if you aren't, I forget the specific qualifications, but if you meet certain low vision standards, you can get extra training and then have a specific code on your license saying you can drive during the day. But I do that voluntarily. I don't want to drive at night. It's not a good feeling for me. Nobody else wants that. So I was diagnosed 6 years ago. So I was in my late 20s for people who want to do math. But yeah, so it was my late 20s when I was diagnosed, and I've definitely seen changes to my vision in that period of time. I have always known that I had bad vision. I had bifocals when I was 8. So for me, having severe myopia is something I've always had. I just didn't necessarily have a name for it, which I guess is technically degenerative myopia or pathological myopia. I had some eye tests done, I guess, a few years before I got diagnosed. And so they discovered that in my retinas, I had lattice degeneration, which is just a lot of little tiny holes in your retina that you would get from it being stretched so thin. So I did already have a retina specialist, fortunately, but I was at work one day and I was looking at an Excel spreadsheet and the lines just started to get really wavy and it kind of felt like I had an oil slick in my eye. And I was like, this is not right. This is not good. So I called my eye doctor and they said, go see a retina specialist. And so it was actually a little bit longer before he was able to diagnosed me with myopic macular degeneration. They weren't entirely sure that's what it was at first. So the very first thing was basically I got the news and then it was, and now you need to get an injection in your eye. So that kind of, the panic over that sort of overtook anything else in terms of this is a condition you're going to have for life. So it was initially just feeling a little lost or feeling kind of isolated because I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't finding information about it. And I didn't know anybody else who had this diagnosis to talk to them to find out what is your experience? What have you been through so far? So it was very rough initially, just not being able to learn or understand what it would mean for me in the long term. So I decided if I'm going through this right now, if I'm feeling if I'm feeling alone, if I'm feeling confused because I don't understand what's going on and I'm not finding that information when I'm searching for it, that's something I have the ability to provide that for other people. I have the ability to share my story with other people. So if somebody else is getting diagnosed and looking for that information or looking for a person to connect with, at least they can find one person. And so I have had a lot of people, either through Instagram or through my website, just sending me emails or sending me messages and kind of asking, especially a couple is before they get their first injection, they're like, can you kind of walk me through what this experience is like? Or can you just kind of let me know, I've been feeling frustrated about this, can you give me advice on how you've handled it? So it's been really rewarding to be able to, like I said, to be a resource for other people that I wish I'd had when I was diagnosed. In terms of accessibility, so I was doing some online courses when I'd gotten diagnosed, and through that experience, I realized that a lot of digital environments were not developed with people who had similar needs to me in mind. So I decided, all right, what am I learning from this experience, and how can I inform other people to improve it for other people with either visual issues or just anything that impacts the way they're communicating online. So because I go every 4 weeks, and that's been for the past couple years, I've gotten to see, I guess, the entire evolution of the eye care process. So the doctor's office I go to, they're located in a hospital. So I think they in particular have had to gradually figure out what works and what doesn't, for people who are going into that environment, to make sure they're staying as safe as possible. I know that because my eyes are so unpredictable with with getting bleeds, whether they're the benign ones or having the fluid from the blood vessels, they want me to come in every 4 weeks continually. But I know they were cutting down on some appointments for people who were just there for monitoring. They were kind of limiting it to only people who they thought would probably need injections to make sure they keep their appointments. The biggest change that they made, I'll say the two biggest ones, is that there's only one doctor in at a time seeing patients, just to limit the number of people you have to come into contact with. So along with that, when I go to my appointments now, I'm the only one who's allowed to go into the building. But they have made sure that they're keeping both the patients and staff safe. They've gradually increased either physical or different types of barriers to keep you from interacting with staff. It's still, you can still see and talk to them, but they have, the plastic shields up just to minimize their interaction with all the people they're going to see throughout the day. They've limited how much you move once you're inside the office. So typically I would go to my appointment, I would go to one room to have my eyes checked and have my pressure checked. I would go to a separate area of the hospital to have my OCT scans and my photos taken, and then kind of gone back to another room for the doctor to meet me, and then another room if I was to get an injection. So now they pretty much set it up so you stay in your one room almost your entire appointment. They walk you over to where you're getting your scans done, and they have one person there at a time, and they walk you immediately back to your room. And then if you have to get an injection, then they'll move you to the more sterilized area. So my husband, he will take me to and from appointments, and he'll, help me around the house. But for the most part, I like to be self-sufficient. So I try to do as much as I can on my own. I just need to prove to myself that I can still do things. So some of it's just retaining my independence as long as I can, just to prove to myself that I can still do it. I'm somebody who travels a lot, so I think the biggest impact is that I don't leave my house as much. Some of that is because with my appointments, I wanna self quarantine for a week or two, just in the event that I'd happen to come into contact with something or somebody who had the virus while I was in the hospital. So I personally make sure I stay home probably more than most people, just so I don't accidentally give it to somebody because I'm asymptomatic. So I think being in my house a little more is one of the biggest changes. But there's a lot of positive things that I've seen come from this, and that's, because I don't drive at night, or because I don't drive in a lot of situations, I've loved that so many things have become virtual now. So even like get-togethers with friends, or being able to work remotely, there's a lot of things that would give me anxiety trying to figure out the logistics that I don't need to worry about anymore, because everybody else are trying to figure out the same logistics now. So there's been a lot of improvements in terms of accessibility, or you know, things that, because everybody is dealing with them now, they're realizing, oh, we need to invest more in allowing people, like I said, to have these kinds of meetings virtually. So like I said, there's been, I think it's stressful for everybody, and I think, I know myself personally, I have a lot more anxiety now than I used to, for a number of different reasons. But there are definitely things that have happened as a result of COVID that I'm hoping stick around once we are able to kind of get outdoors and get out of our houses a little more. So this is the part, now this is gonna make me emotional. So for me, the first thing I want to do is see my grandparents in person. I know I'm very lucky to be the age that I am, to still have both of my mom's parents are here, but I can't see them because, again, what I was saying, I don't want to be asymptomatic or dealing with this, even though I'm not going out much. I can't go near them, and I know that's hard for them, not being able to see most of us in person. But it's I I just want to see them, because it is very hard thinking that, I have to avoid them to make sure that they stay safe, but there's also the very real possibility I might not get to see them again. So that's, as soon as I can, that's the number one thing. Like, my family is very, very close. And so just this in general, we've done some like virtual parties. My grandma had her 96th birthday, so we've done, virtual birthday parties for them. But it's just not being able to be near my family to make sure we're all staying safe is very difficult. So that's the very first thing, is just to go over to their house and give them giant hugs as soon as I'm able to do that. So I would say one other thing to share, just for anybody who is experiencing any kind of vision issues, because I think it can be a very isolating situation, not just because you can't find other people who are experiencing what you're going through, but there's no way to really make anyone else see exactly what you're seeing. So I think it's always really helpful to find, there's a lot of communities online of people who are dealing with a number of different vision issues. And I think it's important to connect with that, especially now when we are all, not able to get together in person. I think finding that it helps you both in terms of just having resources or asking questions, but also sometimes you just want to vent your frustrations about what you're dealing with and not have somebody try and like solve it or come up with a resolution for that problem. You just want to say like, yeah, I totally get what you're going through, and it sucks, or it's frustrating. So I'd say just making sure that you find a community of people who you can share this experience with, even though it's all slightly different, and none of us will know exactly what the other one's going through. It's just crucial to have that outlet, or to have those resources available.